the demand by Afghan Taliban to reverse FATA merger, it was not TTP's demand, it was Afghan Taliban's demand.
A number of terrorist attacks happened in Balochistan, which were followed by very swift and effective counterterrorism operations in Balochistan.
As Pakistan has announced a new strategy of Azm-e-Istehkam, which says that your security forces will fight terrorists, but the entire nation and the state and the people have to fight terrorism. So this fight cannot be won just by the kinetic actions. Neither TTP nor Baloch terrorists recognize the state of Pakistan. For that, they are employing all terrorist actions, including killing innocent civilians.
The counter-terrorism effort of the government and state are getting the desired political support that they deserve and expect?
Sadly, no. The biggest party, PTI, is openly pro-Taliban. During their stint in power, they were willing to open offices for them. They declared that.
So when Mr. Imran-Khan claims that he was on the verge of achieving peace with TTP, but when his favorite general was removed as the intelligence chief of Pakistan's ISI, that really sort of harmed those efforts. What do you make of this?
Even in incarceration, Mr. Imran-Khan never loses an opportunity to amaze and entertain us with the fictions that he creates almost on a daily basis. Afghan Taliban have never agreed to eliminate TTP. That would be just committing a suicide.
That Mr. Khan's understanding of striking peace deal with TTP meant yielding to all their demands, giving them space and opportunity to strengthen themselves in KPK in return for temporary commitment for peace?
Mr. Khan has not been committed to peace, but pieces. TTP, AlQaeda, Afghan Taliban are joined at the hip.
Viewers, very warm welcome to another episode of The Weekend. Today, this world has witnessed some very interesting events ranging from floods to a surge in terrorist attacks and some very interesting statements from some political leaders offering some sort of sympathy for terrorist movements and the prospects of a leader being held for number of cases in a jail, vying as a future chancellor of one of the leading Western universities, Oxford. So we'll discuss all these three issues today. And like always, we are joined by Mr. Murtaza Solangi. Very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Murtaza,
let me ask you something big on this global warming. It's no more an analysis or assessment. It's a reality that hits the entire planet every day, every year. But recently we have seen a lot of weather-related actions. We are witnessing in Japan, we are witnessing it in Bangladesh, in southern India. We are witnessing in torrential rains in Pakistan and with a possible storm on our southern coast in hitting both Sindh and Balochistan. So all these things are related somehow. what would you say?
Murtaza, I think natural disasters are perhaps as old as our planet. But what is very interesting and somewhat worrying is the politicization of these natural disasters by certain countries in order to promote their geopolitical agenda or to cause harm to those countries which do not subscribe to a particular policy. Japan has witnessed perhaps one of the worst environmental disaster in almost 5 decades. And millions of people have been evacuated. But the Japanese nation is a very educated and well-resourced nation which has survived a lot of disasters, frequent earthquakes, and I'm sure with international support and their wisdom, they'll be able to surmount these challenges. But when you look at these disasters which are frequent occurring in South Asia, one cannot help notice how these disasters are used for a geopolitical agenda of a major country. In 77 years, Pakistan has witnessed floods as almost an annual feature. But it is also very unfortunate that whenever these floods happen, India opens the floodgates unannounced, causing graver damage to Pakistan and inconvenience. Whereas during the winter months, when water is scarce, the water supply is not in accordance with the Indus Water Treaty. What we witnessed this time is something similar. Immediately after the departure of Sheikh Hasina from power, one witnesses 3 key trends emerging from Indian leadership. It seems that New Delhi wants to extract a price from the Bengali nation for throwing Sheikh Hasina, their favorite politician, out of power. Number one, this time, unlike previous years, they opened the floodgates of their dams unannounced. And this was confirmed by the Flood Monitoring Department of Bangladesh. Secondly, a number of Bengalis used to visit India for tourism, for trade, and for medical treatment, and their visas have been stopped. And the third thing is a growing international narrative emerging, which Mr. Modi also mentioned in his meeting with the Western leaders, that the Hindus are being persecuted in Bangladesh. So these are my observations, but what's your perspective on these developments?
Well, I think you have more information what India has done, but Earth is our common home. If you talk to scientists, they would tell you how temperature has been rising, and mainly it's because of the greenhouse effect, because of the emission of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide by the industrial enterprises, mainly in the quote-unquote developed world. I mean, we are one of the worst sufferers of this environmental destruction and environmental emergency. But we have not contributed to what Earth is going through. So we would have no option but to go on methods of using and consuming energy that has no carbon footprint.
But let me ask you a supplementary question on this. There is a prospect of a major cyclone developing in the Arabian Sea as we speak now. And there are warnings being issued by NDMA and other organizations that people living on the coast of Sindh and Balochistan should be ready and be careful, well stocked to avoid any inconvenience. What do you think? Are we prepared for any such disaster?
You can never be prepared, no matter how developed of a country you are. I mean, you and I have seen what happened in United States, how those tropical storms have done to United States and continue doing it. So we are a country that has poor systems overall. So all we can do is try to raise awareness amongst the people, especially the fishermen, the coastal areas, evacuate people. You know, in Japan, thousands of people have been evacuated. Tokyo, you know, people have died there and may die even. So you can do whatever your national state institutions can do. But that's all you can do. But the big picture is to reduce this global warming, because the way it is rising, Earth would not be a place where people can live. Many parts of the Earth would be unlivable. This also includes pollution. People can't breathe if it's too toxic. I just came back from Beijing. I remember the first time when I went there in 2008, you couldn't see the sky. It was so hazy. It was so polluted. And if you go now to Beijing, as I just arrived from there, the air is very clean. You can see the blue sky.
And can you briefly explain how they have managed that?
Because they are ending too much carbon pollution, even with vehicles. I mean, if you drive around Beijing streets, you have cars with green license plates. Those are fully electronic cars that have no
carbon emission.
Carbon emission. That means they can drive all days, 7 days a week. While you have other vehicles that use hydrocarbon energy, you cannot drive all 7 days. So you have to limit them.
Let me add a very interesting thought on that very important information that you shared. In some European countries, the taxation on the use of roads is determined not in accordance with the engine power or car size, but in terms of how much carbon that car is producing.
Correct.
So those cars which are gas guzzlers and produce greater carbon emission are taxed heavier, and there are tax incentives given to those cars which are either hybrid or fully electric.
Also, during rush hours, as you have seen in the US, and it should happen here as well, that on the expressway, you have high occupancy vehicle lanes, HOV lanes.
As we used to, on our way back from office, used to do. Yes.
So if you can have 4 people or 3 people in your car, you can enter those lanes and you can drive. If you are driving all by yourself, you cannot enter those lanes.
Yes. So the speed limit would be different.
Exactly. So you are somehow employing all methods to reduce the vehicles on the road. That avoids rush, congestion, as well as the emission of carbon gases.
So climate change is, a global challenge. But another challenge that this part of the world and Pakistan in particular is facing is terrorism. So let's come to the second topic of our program today. Last week witnessed some very unfortunate and tragic events. A number of terrorist attacks happened in Balochistan, which were followed by very swift and effective counterterrorism operations in Balochistan, which led to the death of 21 terrorists in Balochistan and several in KPK. What do you make of that? What's the cause of this surge in terrorist attacks in Pakistan?
Well, You have more grip on the security issues because you talk about those issues almost on a daily basis. I'm sure the kinetic actions taken by the armed forces of Pakistan would be a good blow to those terrorists. And not only in Balochistan, elsewhere as well. As Pakistan has announced a new strategy of Azm-e-Istehkam, which says that your security forces will fight terrorists, but the entire nation and the state and the people have to fight terrorism. So this fight cannot be won just by the kinetic actions. That's one thing. It's very important to fight terrorists. That doesn't mean to belittle the importance of fighting those counterterrorism operations. But in collaboration, along with those kinetic operations, you have to employ other things. Number one is win hearts and minds of the people. Push an economic development agenda. Push political empowerment agenda. Push reconciliation agenda. You have to have all those actions in tandem. It's just like an orchestra with every instrument playing on its time and all taken together create that wonderful piece of music. So defeating terrorism is very complex. It's very sad and unfortunate what has happened. And we know that there are a lot of regional and global powers also affiliated with this game, including Afghanistan, especially after August 15, 2021. Much against the hopes and aspirations of some of the security analysts who kept giving us this lollipop that soon after Afghan Taliban takeover in Kabul, it will be all hunky-dory, all our Western border issues will disappear. Just the opposite has happened. So Afghanistan has linkages with terrorism in Balochistan, with terrorism in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and elsewhere.
So when we try to understand the nature of terrorism in KPK and Balochistan, what's the difference?
There are some common threads. Both do not accept the monopoly of the state power. Neither TTP nor Baloch terrorists recognize the state of Pakistan and its monopoly over the use of force. So that's something common. In case of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or in case of religious terrorists, they want to force their way of life and their way of understanding of religion on 250 million people of Pakistan by guns, by improvised explosive devices, by suicide bombing, by other terrorist actions. That's their method. In case of Balochistan, the Baloch terrorists do not want to impose their way of life on entire Pakistan. They just want to secede and separate.
They want other cultures to leave Balochistan.
And
so they have a defensive approach.
And they want to break away the province of Balochistan from Pakistan. So for that, they are employing all terrorist actions, including killing innocent civilians. But both have linkages regionally. There are regional powers and even global powers who are actively engaged and supporting both strands of terrorism. At the same time, as opposite as they would sound, the Baloch terrorists on the face of it are secular, liberal,
nationalists. Yes.
while TTP and those religious fanatics have an opposite worldview, but both have operational and logistical collaborations. So you see the reality that as much as they would sound opposite or different, they are joining efforts at the same time, and also the people behind them are somehow pulling their strings and making them work together.
Do you think the counter-terrorism effort of the government and state are getting the desired political support that they deserve and expect?
Sadly, no.
Why and where?
If you talk to political parties, let's take an example of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The biggest party, PTI, is openly pro-Taliban. During their stint in power, they were willing to open offices for them. They declared that. They have been providing millions of rupees to madrasas known for training jihadis. Another political party, JUI, is sympathetic towards not Taliban inside Pakistan, but their cousins on the other side of the border.
So let me interrupt you to ask a supplementary question. So when Mr. Imran-Khan claims that he was on the verge of achieving peace with TTP, but when his favorite general was removed as the intelligence chief of Pakistan's ISI, that really sort of harmed those efforts. What do you make of this?
Even in incarceration, Mr. Imran-Khan never loses an opportunity to amaze and entertain us with the fictions that he creates almost on a daily basis. This is the news that has been published on Friday in almost all newspapers. He makes outlandish claims when he says, oh, after August 15, 2021, we sent General Faiz to Kabul, and Afghan Taliban had agreed with us on elimination of TTP.
But we did see him enjoying the cup of tea in Serena, Kabul. He seemed to be in celebration mode, wasn't he?
Yes. But this is the biggest bull that I have heard in a long time. It's true that General Faiz went there, but Pakistani negotiators did not talk to Afghan Taliban government. Afghan Taliban only facilitated negotiations with TTP leaders who had sought refuge in Afghanistan. And Afghan Taliban have never agreed to eliminate TTP. That would be just committing a suicide.
Let me ask you another question. So when the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran-Khan, sends his intelligence chief to Kabul, and he claims that he was hopeful for a peace deal with TTP, his main prong of that strategy was not just to send General Faiz to Kabul, but he was in the last 20 years also shaping the environment in a manner that they were tolerated and there was some sort of sympathy for the TTP and Taliban worldview?
Well, that's very much there, but let's go to the facts. I have talked to people who were close to the negotiators at that time. And I have had the access to see some of those talking points discussed between Pakistani negotiators and Afghan Taliban and TTP. The demands of Afghan Taliban and TTP was to resettle those thousands of militants back in Pakistan, and not only do that, but provide compensation to their families. And the last and not the least, the most damaging thing was that the team led by General Faiz agreed to Afghan Taliban that we will go back on 25th Amendment, declaring tribal areas part of Pakistan. The merger of tribal regions into the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they agreed to reverse that. And they had actually filed a petition in Supreme Court challenging that 25th Amendment. So that was the most damaging thing. Instead of what Mr. Khan has claimed that Afghan Taliban had agreed to eliminate TTP, far from that. It was a plan of not only strengthening and rehabilitating TTP within Pakistan, but the most dangerous thing was reversing the merger of FATA.
So are you saying that Mr. Khan's understanding of striking peace deal with TTP meant yielding to all their demands, giving them space and opportunity to strengthen themselves in KPK in return for temporary commitment for peace?
Mr. Khan has not been committed to peace, but pieces.
But now he's vying to become the chancellor of the most prestigious Western university, Oxford University, with such credentials and such thoughts and such political and ideological legacy based on active support and sympathy for Taliban spread over 20 years. Some very irresponsible statements regarding women dress and, crimes against them, such as rapes, and also a very questionable corruption-related legacy. Do you think why Oxford University could not come up with anybody who has a less exciting background to lead them for the next 10 years?
I'll come to Oxford, but let me share an important piece of information about these talks with Afghan Taliban. The demand by Afghan Taliban to reverse FATA merger was not shared by TTP. It was not TTP's demand. It was Afghan Taliban's demand that you, on the other side of Durin line, reverse a constitutional amendment. And Mr. Khan and his team accepting to this demand by reneging and violating your own national sovereignty.
Are you saying that Afghan Taliban demanded that Pakistan violates its own sovereignty and territorial integrity by reviewing reversing the FATA merger because it suited TTP? What other evidence do you need that basically TTP and Afghan Taliban are two sides of the same coin?
It gets more interesting. Not only that Afghan Taliban wanted the reversal of FATA merger, but lo and behold, if you try to investigate, I found out something more interesting and more heinous. Afghan Taliban made that demand partly on their behalf and partly on behalf of who? Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda wanted a and region, an area which is ungoverned. So whenever they want to launch any global terrorist attacks, it's not strictly under the state control of Pakistan, because they have been using this area against many countries, including US and Europe.
And this particular disclosure that you've just mentioned is reinforced by the recent UN report, which has said that Daesh, AlQaeda, and TTP
Correct.
are heavily entrenched in the rank and file of Afghan Taliban and have deep penetration within sensitive ministries like Interior Ministry and their intelligence department.
TTP, Al-Qaeda, Afghan Taliban are joined at the hip. They have always been organically connected. But interestingly, why Afghan Taliban agreed to this? I already explained to you why Al-Qaeda wanted reversal of FATA merger. Afghan Taliban wanted this, keeping in view if someday there is a repeat of post 9/11 actions. Any global power or a conglomerate of global power pushes them out of Kabul again.
They have some breathing space.
They need
breathing space.
Yes, they need a buffer zone, a playground where they can play. So there is a nexus of Al-Qaeda and TTP and Afghan Taliban. So that is the story which has not come to the limelight. This is how the real essence of those negotiations was. Now, to flip it around and Mr. Khan telling us that, we had almost finished the TTP problem is nothing but BS. Let me just tell this.
No, but this is a very interesting explanation that you gave. And exactly when the US and British forces were sacrificing their men and women fighting Taliban in Afghanistan, Mr. Khan was building his political career by trying to justify and glorify the ideology and way of life of Afghanistan. Fast forward, today he is one of the prime candidates to become the Chancellor of Oxford University, which is sort of the cradle of Western civilization and Western worldview and liberal paradigm.
If elected, I'm not sure if he will be. If elected, I'll tell Brits, well, you deserve that.
Mr. Murtaza Solangi, thank you so much for joining us and sharing such insightful disclosures and analysis on some of the most important and interesting events that the world and this part of the world has been witnessing. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. Keep watching The Weekend for more interesting and informative discourse like this. Thank you.